today, and Cristiano Ronaldo, even though it was thought to be his turn, was shut out 1-1 as the Congo was able to get their first point. DR Congo was able to get their first point in World Cup history. It has been an insanely exciting start to this tournament. Austria beat Jordan late last night 3-1. England now has a 1-0 lead over Luka Modric and Croatia. It's going to be Ghana and Panama, Uzbekistan and Colombia tonight. And, of course, we are roughly 48 hours, a little less than that, away from the U.S. men's national team taking on Australia after their 4-1 win against Portugal. Hello, how are you? Happy Wednesday. Drive time, 14 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on a scorching hot Utah June day outside. And as it is every single day, it is good to have you along for the ride. The latest on the Walker Kessler drama, our interview with Tim McMahon, highly aggregated yesterday by bad actors and corny jazz bloggers that don't want to give credit where credit is due. Tim McMahon wrote a story today on the 5-year, $140 million offer on the table from the Utah Jazz that would make Walker Kessler the highest-paid non-All-Star center in the history of pro basketball. Of course, the reports are Walker and his camp believes he is worth more. I'll tell you this, after getting some intel overnight, from what I've been told, this is nothing more than a tense negotiation that happens every offseason in the NBA. At least that's what the Jazz are saying right now. We'll see how it plays out. I don't see any scenario where Walker Kessler is not with the Utah Jazz next year, but stranger things have happened, and Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge have shown that they are not afraid to make trades or make transactions that could be unpopular with fan bases at the time. And what does that mean for draft night, right? That's going to be an interesting topic that we'll get into on the show today. But a lot to do. The offseason in the NBA has begun. We are 6 days away from the NBA draft. Mandatory training camps going on in the NFL. Big 12 Media Days coming up for you Utah football fans on July the 7th and the 8th. Myself, Sean O'Connell, will be on the ground in Dallas to bring you 8 hours of coverage on both days, both Tuesday and Wednesday. So mark that down on your calendars, kind of the unofficial start to the college football calendar, even though the college football news cycle has been really busy. And June, a very important month for recruiting, so we'll give you some updates in the world of college football as well. Little offseason NHL conversation today after Carolina hoists the cup. What's next for the Mammoth? John Tortorella will not return to coach Vegas next year. So we've got some good guests to talk about all this stuff today. We'll start things off with Neil Smith, former general manager of the New York Rangers, GM when the Rangers won the cup and held a parade in Lower Manhattan, where the New York Knicks will be tomorrow. Canyon of Champions. More than 5 million people expected to descend upon Lower Manhattan, and that will be chaos. But the Knicks championship parade will be tomorrow. But we'll talk with Neil about some offseason NHL stuff, his thoughts on John Tortorella exiting stage left and not coaching Vegas next year. And then coming up at 3 o'clock, we only really get to do this once, sometimes twice a year, because during the season he is so busy. But in my opinion, the best in the business, and he is ascending to potentially one of, if not the best to ever do it. He currently is the voice of the NBA for ABC and ESPN. He's also the voice of the New York Knicks. He's my friend Mike Breen. He is a gentleman of the highest order, a Minch's Minch, as you would say. And Mike is a New Yorker, but you wouldn't know it based off of how professionally he is one calling the game. So excited to bring Mike Breen in today to the show. We'll do a little Jazz draft and some Walker Kessler stuff a little bit later on. Tony Jones will stop by from The Athletic. And then we'll do some World Cup and some RSL with Pablo Mastroeni. So, good show, busy show, Wednesday show, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend with great temperatures and conditions coming up this weekend. Hopefully you have something fun planned. Neil Smith, Mike Breen, Tony Jones, Pablo Mastroeni, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy who's recovering from being hit by a truck
what up?
Randomly, Porter Larson. How's your Wednesday, bud?
Wednesday's gone well. Still basking in the glory that is being an NBA champion. Yes, me.
Yes,
NBA
you are.
Champion.
Yeah, you played well, I got to say.
Thank you. I at least contributed in energy, I don't know. But still basking in
bask
it.
in it. You should bask in it. I mean, that's the point of being a fan, especially when in your lifetime you've not really seen them even have a chance. I mean, this is what being a fan is all about.
Them nor anyone else I have ever cheered for. Again, I am a Cowboys fan, so I was a toddler when they were good, a toddler when the Knicks were good. I saw the Mets get to a World Series and should have probably won one. I've seen the Hokies be really, really good, but never anything on the national stage. So, when it comes to that, I'll enjoy it for a long, long while. And again, that's a series and a playoff run I'll probably tell my descendants about. So yeah, we'll bask in it. And again, on a day when Mike Breen joins the show, discuss that a little bit further. But otherwise, bunch of local stuff going on quietly. Of course, the NBA draft less than a week away. Jazz offseason chatter, Pablo with RSL's break and the World Cup. So plenty to get to outside of our New York Knicks and their NBA championship.
Wait, have you changed your stance on having kids? Interesting.
No. I mean, I don't know that I was ever entirely against it. It's just gotta there's got to be a lot of cards falling the right way to make that happen. But I've got a nephew.
I was going to say you'll tell your nephew about it.
I've got a nephew. Okay. Family's got pets I can talk to and regularly do. So.
Hey, I'm not judging. I mean, that would be weird. They don't understand what you're saying, but do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's what you think.
They don't, dude. You think when you talk to a dog, he understands exactly what you're saying?
No. Some of them maybe.
All right. I'll tell you what. Being Uncle Spence is like my favorite moniker. Being an uncle is the way to go. Like, I have one child. He's grown, but I've got 21 nieces and nephews, and it's awesome.
Well, and guess what? You don't have to do, at least not
anything.
If you're like not babysitting or like really being a part of it. Yeah, you just get to like be the cool uncle, hang out, do the cool stuff. Hopefully not change any diapers and whatnot. That's the good stuff.
No, you don't have to do anything. I went down to see my nieces and nephews a few weeks ago in Draper, and I was playing. My little nephew Teddy wanted to show me this new cool game he got, and I totally broke the game. I broke the piece to the game, and I called my brother Ben. I'm like, dude, it's broken. We're done. Sorry, I got to go home.
There you go.
But I played with Teddy for like an hour. It was awesome. And then I broke the game, and I had to replace the set, but I didn't have to fix it. You don't have to do anything as an uncle. It's the best way to go.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I'm in my first couple years as an uncle still, so settling into it.
Enjoy it. All right, England is up 1-0 on Croatia. The Three Lions trying to bring it home. God save the Queen. We'll keep you up to date on the World Cup today. Our first guest will be Neil Smith. We'll do some off-season hockey and some Stanley Cup hockey with Neil. And then don't forget, set your alarm. Mike Breen, the voice of the NBA, at 3 o'clock. But before we jump into our guest list today on a Wednesday afternoon, courtesy of our friends at DraftKings, it's time now for your opening tip. Now, DraftKings Sports is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, Utah. The whole world is watching one tournament right now. Group stage chaos, knockout drama, stoppage time heartbreak. The DraftKings Sports app is now live in Utah. So whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every match, every moment, all in one app. The world's biggest stage is in the palm of your hand. Now, new DraftKings customers, sign up with code ESPN 700. Spend $5 to get $200 in total rewards. That's code ESPN 700 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Event trading offered by DraftKings Predictions, a CFTC registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click-to-claim issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. That ends on June the 28th. Terms are dkng.co/predictions promo. All right. Just want to give a hearty you're welcome to our competition for providing you with actual intel about the team that is actually on your radio station. Tim McMahon joined our program yesterday and reported that the Utah Jazz have offered Walker Kessler a deal in the neighborhood of $140 million in about 5 years. Then, again, that was aggregated by other people without giving us credit. That's the name of the business these days. But Tim wrote a piece today up on ESPN.com. And, of course, Tim is the guy that's been on the Walker stuff for, honestly, about a year and a half. So about $140 million over 5 years. That would be the largest contract ever given to a center who has not made an All-Star game. Now, would Walker have made the All-Star game last year? Probably not. Of course, he was off to an incredible start before he had to have shoulder surgery And look, when it comes to all of this stuff, you have to wonder what's coming from the team, what's coming from the agent, and what's the motivation from either side to make these things public. I'll just say this. 5 years, $140 million sounds more than fair to me for Walker Kessler. Now, the name of the negotiation, unless you're Jalen Brunson, who, by the way, left $113 million on the table for the New York Knicks to fill out their roster and win an NBA championship, most stars hold out for more. Jalen took a generational wealth away from himself and his family for the Knicks to build a championship team. But this is Walker's first big payday, okay? So the name of the game, if you're an agent, is to simply try to milk the team for all you possibly can get. But I'll say this. I don't think Walker Kessler can get a better offer sheet on the open market. There aren't a lot of teams with cap space. The reports are today the Lakers and LeBron James are now engaging as far as, do they want to bring him back? And say whatever you want about LeBron. At 41 years old, he was 21 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. That's like 8 players in the league. And if the Lakers want to move on from him, and if they have an Austin Reeves decision to make, maybe the Lakers are a player here with Walker Kessler. But I don't think there's a team in the league that does have space that will supersede a $140 million 5-year contract offer for a center who has not made an all-star game, nor a center who is currently healthy a year ago. He's coming off an injury. And obviously, shoulder surgery can be really problematic. So, look, I believed in Tim McMahon's reporting, and congratulations on being able to verify Tim's report, because that makes you look like you have sources. But if what Tim is saying is correct, I am staunchly on the side of the Utah Jazz here. I think that's a very fair, more than fair contract offer to put on the table for Walker Kessler. Now, as I referenced coming into the show, had a few conversations via text over the past 24 hours about this dynamic, just to kind of see where we're at and whether or not there really are problems brewing with Walker and the Jazz. And essentially what I was told is that this is the run-of-the-mill standard tense negotiation that happens in the NBA every single year. And I think the Jazz are tremendously confident that Walker Kessler will be back with them, not just next year, but long-term. And as Tim said yesterday, I don't think we need to draw a straight line between the negotiations between Walker and the Jazz and what could happen 6 days from now when the Jazz have the number 2 pick in the NBA draft. Of course, all of the reporting over the past 48 hours, Darren Peterson will only work out with Washington. He's not going to visit Utah. He will not visit Memphis. Memphis has the 3rd overall pick. A.J. DeBonta, of course, has already visited and worked out for both teams. I mean, hell, A.J. lives here, and he was at a ton of Jazz games this year. So it's not like they needed to do more intel on him. And then there's the Cameron Boozer side of things, and Cameron Boozer has worked out for the Jazz and the Grizzlies and the Wizards. The Wizards hold all the cards here. I continue to maintain where I'm at with this, and my belief is that the Utah Jazz are going to draft whoever Washington doesn't out of A.J. DeBonta and Darren Peterson. But there is this growing belief among a lot of basketball people that the Jazz really like Cameron Boozer, and that could be the pick. I do believe, the Walker, Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., Lowry Market in front court. I just feel like either AJ or Darren is what this team needs right now. I am not one that believes Keontae George has suddenly become this top shelf NBA guard. I think what Keontae showed last year is he clearly is a bucket getter in the NBA, and he has a role on a good NBA team, but that role more or less, in my opinion, for a really good team, like the championship contending teams this year, okay? So let's just dig into this a little bit. I hesitate to put Cleveland on the list, but they were Eastern Conference Finals team. Their starting backcourt was Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. So Keontae doesn't start for Cleveland. Keontae doesn't start for Boston, okay, with Derek White, with Jason Tatum, with Jaylen Brown. So those two teams in the East, of course, will throw the Knicks in there because they just won the thing. Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges. Keontae doesn't start for them. And then we'll use the two teams in the West that most people thought were the best teams in the league. Of course, he doesn't start for San Antonio or Oklahoma City. To me, Keontae George, for a team that's actually in the mix to not just make the playoffs, but maybe win a round or two, is a guy you want to bring off your bench, and you feel okay doing that. Because in NBA history, it's been a very valuable commodity to have a guy that comes off the bench to start a fire and get you buckets. And that's what Keontae does. Darren Peterson, to me, or A.J. DeBonsa, you put him next to Ace Bailey, and, I mean, those are two unbelievably long wings with the ability to play multiple positions, guard multiple positions, and then you define the positions however you want. Because Darren Peterson, his reps are telling people he wants to play point guard in the NBA. Okay, so I view that as just like a perfect fit. If we kind of crystallize this a little bit with Darren Peterson and Ace Bailey and Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler, and that's your starting five, and then Keontae comes off the bench as this 25, 28-minute a night guy that can fill it up. And then you get into the Filipowskis and the Sensabas. Do they bring back Nurkic? And then we start to, like, really crystallize what this team can look like and maybe finally accurately analyze what they can do next year. And I'll maintain, if they win 42 to 45 games and make the play-in tournament next year, that's a big win. It's a 20-game improvement, which rarely happens in this league. It happened this year with San Antonio. Of course, that's a unique situation because they have a unique player that doesn't come around very often, once in a generation, and Victor Wembanyama. The Jazz just don't have that. They might not even have a top 25 player on their roster. So it's not, I don't think it's realistic to expect much more than that, but a lot of intrigue based off of the Tim McMahon reporting on this show yesterday, then the PC wrote for ESPN. All right, we'll get back to this. Mike Breen, the voice of the NBA, is going to join us. But coming up on the other side, what's the offseason looking like for the Utah Mammoth? How did the Carolina Hurricanes get it done? John Tortorella is out in Vegas. And what's a championship parade like in Lower Manhattan, Canyon of Champions? Neil Smith will join us right out of the gates. Busy Wednesday show, and it's good to have you with us on ESPN 700. the voice of the NBA and the voice of the New York Knicks, but Mike Breen has become really the lead guy for ABC and ESPN. Mike's going to join us in about 25 minutes from right now. The New York Knicks will hold their championship parade in Lower Manhattan coming up tomorrow, where 5 million plus are expected to descend upon the city to celebrate. Our next guest knows what it's like to be on the float in a championship parade in New York. Former general manager of the New York Rangers. Always fun to welcome in Neil Smith to the program. Hello, Neil. Happy Wednesday. How are you?
Yes, happy Wednesday to you, Spencer. I'm very good, thanks.
So what is that like for those of us that will never experience being a player, a coach, or an executive on a championship team on a championship parade in New York City? What is that like, Neil?
It's surreal. It's it's what you have seen on television with the astronauts and other people that have been celebrated in New York, and it's no other city can do it the way that New York does it. And when you come around the corner, where you all get onto the floats at a certain point, and I can't tell you where exactly that is, but then you turn the corner to go down the Canyon of Heroes, and it's mind-boggling. The amount of people, the amount of ticker tape. In our day, it was ticker tape. The amount of stuff coming out of the buildings, it's just surreal, and it goes by in a flash because it is so surreal. So there's no place else that can do it like New York.
Is it even possible to take in the surroundings when there's so many fans all over the place? Is it even possible to kind of stop and appreciate the moment? Or again, to your point, are you just kind of on cloud nine the entire time?
No, I did stop. I remember stopping and looking, not stopping dead, but I remember looking at individuals and pointing up at people that were way up in the windows, looking down and hanging over, and looking at a lot of people. So you do try to take in as much as you can, but it's just the moment is so incredible that it's you have a hard time taking it in. You wish you'd gotten it on what we used to call videotape, so that you could watch it over and over again.
All right, so the Carolina Hurricanes are going to have their own championship parade now. What stands out most to you about this, not just what happened during this run, but as we pan back and the way they built this thing, because they've been good for a long time and they finally broke through this year. Tell us your thoughts on this process that you just saw from Carolina.
They're probably the best team as a team, meaning that from goaltender all the way out to first line center and everybody in between. They're probably the best glued together team of everybody, with a tremendous coach who looks like he's a player right now, but he's not. He's been 7 years as a coach. They don't have superstars, and that's the one thing that is sort of astounding about this team winning, is that they don't have guys that are household names. I mean, they do have Sebastian Aho, who's excellent, Shvetnikov, who's excellent, Seth Jarvis, who's great, and then they have a second line that came together with an older player named Taylor Hall, who was first overall to Edmonton a couple decades ago, and then you got two youngsters with him, Stankoven and Jackson Blake, and then you've got to back all that up. You've got the captain, the big man, who's last time he won the Stanley Cup was 17 years ago, and that's Jordan Staal. And he's on the third line and wins every faceoff he takes. And then on defense, you really don't have, and you'll relate to this, Spence, you don't have a Brian Leach. You've got Gostis Bear. You've got Slavin, who's one of the best shutdown guys in the league. You've got Sean Walker, and you've got Keandre Miller. But you don't have a star back there. And so this was a team that didn't have a lot of stars. I think the thing that turned the tide in their favor in the final was putting Bussey in net when Anderson got hurt. And after the second period, Rod Brindamore put Brandon Bussey in net. He did a tremendous job. Carolina somehow fought back and in 39 seconds scored 3 goals in that game, only to lose in overtime on a bit of a fluky goal. But Brandon Bussey, with his right-handed catching mitt, whereas 90% of the goalies are left-handed catching, and his young and rested enthusiasm, because he hadn't played in so long, he was rested, whereas all these guys on Vegas, and for that matter, Carolina, had to be tired by the time he got into the net, and he wasn't. He was ready to go and did a tremendous job. And I think it was Bussey that actually won this thing for them. They gave the Conn Smythe to Jordan Salt. They should have, the way he led that team, and also he scored 5 goals in 5 different games to start the series. But I think the changing of Anderson to Bussey was the biggest thing that got Carolina the cup.
How commonplace is a story like Bussey? Because it feels very Major League Baseball-ish, where you'll see a player toil in the minors for years and years and years, and then oftentimes these guys are like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sick of sleeping in motels and not making any money. But then there's maybe a handful that stick it out, then eventually do get a call up and maybe have some Major League success. How commonplace is a story like Bussey in the NHL?
It's not at all. I mean, there are players who come from the ECHL all the way to the NHL. Now, the way it goes is ECHL is AA, AHL is AAA, NHL, of course, is Major League. And there are goalies who they want the teams want them to get shots, so they put them on their ECHL team, and then they sometimes can jump quickly from the American League up. But Brandon Bussey, kid from Long Island, Sound Beach, never drafted, was signed by the Providence Bruins to play in the American League, played there for a number of years, was brought up from time to time to back up either Jeremy Swayman or whoever else was the second, and Corpusalo wasn't there yet. So, but he never played in a Boston Bruins game. He sat on the bench and that. So this year in the off season, Florida needed a third goalie, and they signed Brandon Bussey into I think it was a one-way $750 contract, but they had to put him on waivers to get him down to the minor league team so that he could play games. And when they put him on waivers, Carolina had both their goalies hurt, Anderson and Checketts. So they claimed Bussey as their third guy. And he didn't play much at first, but they kept him up with Carolina. And then he started to play some regular season games, played very, very well, got a new contract of a number of years, and now you're in the millions, not high millions, but you're in the millions. You're not in hundreds of thousands. And then he did what he did in the playoffs. So he's an incredible story for young people to not give up.
So when it comes to, because you referenced Stahl's getting a little bit older, how sustainable is Carolina's level right now? Should they be considered a serious contender for the next few years?
I think yes, they're a serious contender for the next few years. They're not Florida Panthers, who won it the first time, and they were the favorite to win it a second time before the season even started. And they played playoff hockey all year long, the Florida Panthers, for those 2 years. And this year they were so beat up by the end of year 3, as you know, everybody was injured and their best players were all out, and they ended up missing the playoffs, which you can understand the fatigue in that team. I think Carolina is going to be a favorite again next year, but I don't think they're going to be the definitive favorite. I think that Colorado will still be considered a huge favorite, and it's because they got McKinnon and Makar and others that are superstars. And when you look at Carolina, they've got this great balanced team with quality throughout their lineup, but they don't have McKinnon or Makar. And when you found teams that have won multiple cups, meaning, Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Florida, you really do have in those lineups some people that are superstars, and that's what leads them to the multiple cups. Yes, Carolina could do it, but they'll do it differently than these other teams.
Speaking of Vegas, some surprising news maybe, or maybe this was the plan all along, just to have John Tortorella come in and kind of right the ship and then move on. The Vegas Knights have promoted Ryan Craig, who coached their AHL affiliate, to now lead the Vegas Golden Knights after, I don't know if Tortorella decided he was moving on or Vegas decided they were moving on from him, but what did you make of that dynamic?
Well, it was Vegas that decided they were moving on, and I know John was stunned when they told him, because he thought that there'd be some discussion, maybe perhaps they were going to give him a contract and keep him there because he'd done an outstanding job. I mean, he was 7-0-1 in the regular season and then took them all the way to the final in Game 6 in the playoffs. So you would think that there would be some consideration there, but for whatever reason, the word is that the plan always was, no matter what happened, to bring Ryan Craig up to be the coach. They've had him there since the beginning. They know him really well. He knows all their players, and he knows their younger players, and that had been their intention. So I was surprised by it. I thought it would drag on a little bit. We'd find out whether Torts is staying or going, but we found out pretty quickly.
Does that change your view on what they can be next year? Or, I mean, look, as we talk about all the time, there's no such thing as a great coach without great players. Does the coaching change mean anything for what Vegas could be next year, or do you still just like their roster that much?
No, I think Vegas is Vegas. That team. I mean, they've got Eichel and Marner. That's a great way to start. They've got Rasmus Anderson, who didn't play that great in the playoffs, but there was a lot of reasons for that, personal reasons. They've still got a great lineup, and I think Carter Hart's only going to continue to get better in goal for them. So I think Vegas will be formidable again next year. Will they get to the final? Who knows? They'll be one of a handful of contenders to get there. They don't have a lot of young players. They don't have a lot of young players coming. They don't have hardly any draft picks because they've spent all this to get to where they got to when they won the Cup and then to try to stay afloat like they have. So at some point, they're going to have to pay the piper because you can't trade away picks, trade away young players, and be good year after year after year. So they usually, Vegas, they want somebody, they go get them.
Give me, and I don't know if you've dug into this just yet because the offseason just started, and now that the offseason's here, of course, the draft is coming up, but as far as I asked you about Ovechkin a couple weeks ago, and I think most people would be stunned if he changes teams. But are there any names out there, free agent wise, that you think could actually change teams that would move the needle for the NHL next year?
I'm sure there is, but none that come right into my mind. And by the way, I want to tell you something. Your listeners will be interested in this because it just came across that Kesselring got traded from Buffalo, where Utah traded him a year ago for Peterka with Doan for Peterka. He was traded to the San Jose Sharks for a switch of number 1 picks. San Jose goes to 27, and Buffalo goes up to 20. So that probably should feel good. He probably wouldn't admit it for Bill Armstrong that his deal is even better. It's basically now Peterka for Doan, and I think that's a win for Utah, although Doan had a real good playoff and good year for Buffalo. But none come to mind. There's not the Panarin out there this year that I know of. And we've reviewed every team on our podcast, and I don't remember seeing a huge name out there. There's some really good players out there for sure, but not that, there's no Connor McDavid or something out there. There's no huge name. They pretty much got signed. So I think we'll have to wait for the summer of 27 to see big name signings.
The two Mammoth free agents that they need to make a decision on, Alexander Kerfoot, who's an unrestricted free agent, and Barrett Hayton are the two main guys. He's restricted. Those are the two that are in front of me. What do you make of Kerfoot was an assistant captain. So Alexander Kerfoot, Barrett Hayton, you think they'll be back with the Mammoth next year?
The problem for Hayton is, the problem for Kerfoot is that he only played 34 games, so he was hurt a lot of the season. He's a good player. He's, but it's going to be tough, to get signed back as their third line, fourth line center when you only played 34 games. Well, we'll see what happens. Barrett Hayton's another center iceman who played 67, so that's a lot of games, and was a pretty respectable, again, third line guy and a plus player. I would be surprised if they didn't sign Hayton back again. I'm sure they will. And it's really a toss-up as to whether Bill Armstrong decides he can do better than Alexander Kerfoot.
Have ESPN's early power rankings up for next year, 1 through 32. And the New York Rangers reside at 29. And this is a team that not too long ago, at least in the regular season, was the best team in pro hockey. As someone who ran that team, what do you think the success of the New York Knicks, because they have the same owner, and we have discussed we've discussed the Jim Dolan things, I can say, on air, right, Neil? I mean, you know, but you work there, you know him, and my guess is he's going to be feeling himself a little bit, and chances are he's going to put a lot of pressure on Chris Drury, who's the general manager, Connecticut's own, by the way. So what sort of shadow do the Knicks now cast over the Rangers, and how much pressure do you think there is on New York to try to figure something out, because they're in a bad spot right now?
They are in a bad spot, and I was actually on a Ranger-centric show yesterday talking about that, and I don't know the inner workings between the ownership and management there. I don't know what the message is. I do know that Chris Drury is Jim Dolan's pick to GM when he decided to make him the GM after Jeff Gorton, and he stuck with him, because I can't imagine after winning the President's Trophy, then the last two seasons have been abominable, that you could survive if you weren't close to the owner. They're paying their coach. He's the most expensive coach in the league, and yet they missed the playoffs. You can do that with me coaching. I don't know what their plan is. I hear that they're going to, that everybody talks about Trocheck being traded, and I guess they will. I guess they're for young players or draft picks or something. But from afar, I don't know what their plan is. I don't know why they gave Panarin away to L.A. He's not a bad person. He's not a bad guy in the locker room. He's not a problem maker. I didn't quite understand that. But again, they must have their own plan. I would think that there is going to be a lot of scrutiny now of the Rangers. There always is, but there might be more now saying, like, well, if you can do it on that side, why can't you do it on the other side? Why can't you get it going? And firsthand, Spence, that when we won the Stanley Cup in '94 and the Knicks came short by a couple of points in Game 7 against Houston, the pressure mounts a little bit on the people that are running the Knicks, because you know what? They're the one tenant that didn't win. So I would think there'd be some pressure, but as long as you're the owner's guy, you're safe until he decides you're not.
Which is the problem working for that guy, because you're one bad mood away. But anyway, let me ask you this before I set you loose. And, we've talked to you the past few weeks about next year for the Mammoth, but I've got the standings pulled up in front of me. And as my computer refreshes and it kicks me off the internet, you referenced the Avalanche, who in the power rankings are number 2. Minnesota and Dallas are the other two teams in this division that finished ahead of the Mammoth. So as far as what it looks like for the Mammoth next year to improve, that's one thing. But of the 3 teams in front of them, do you think any of those 3 are poised to maybe take a step back?
I would be surprised with Edmonton what happens with them. I think Anaheim's on the way up. I think the Knights are they are where they are. I think the LA Kings are on the way down. I think San Jose Sharks are on their way up. And that's about as far as I'll go, because I don't have strong feelings about anybody else. But I think that I do think that Edmonton could find themselves in trouble this year. It seems like they've got a bunch of things going on there. They don't have a coach right now. I don't understand why they would fire Knobloch. He was a good coach, but they fired him anyway because I guess they got eliminated in the first round. They'll always have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, but does Stan Bowman and his staff able to give them better supplements than they did this year, when they weren't really, they didn't have the depth, I don't think, to beat Anaheim. And Anaheim, a upstart team, was able to take them out in the first round. So I could see them slipping. I don't see them slipping out of the playoffs, without a doubt, with Connor McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard. They'll just they could get into the playoffs probably with their eyes closed. But I see them slipping in the standings because it's an awkward situation there. And again, I'll say what I said last week. I think Bill Armstrong's got to stay with his plan, keep chugging along, and you're going to find yourself up there. I mean, that's what the Anaheim Ducks basically did. And look at them now.
Neil, where can people go find your podcast, my friend?
Any platform, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you can get podcasts, and also on YouTube, where we would love it if you would subscribe because that helps us. But you can find us on YouTube, audio and video, or any of those other platforms. And I got to tell you, we've got countries where we've had downloads where I didn't even ever heard of the country. It's amazing how there must be a hockey fan almost in every country in the world.
Well, it's an international sport. You know what I mean? People all around the world love themselves some hockey, Neil.
Yeah, I guess so. And that's great because that's been my life, right? So I'm happy. The more the game grows, the more better it is for all of us. Yes,
sir. Have a great week. Love to chat soon, okay?
You too, buddy. Thank you.
All right, Neil Smith, general manager of the New York Rangers when they won the Cup in 1994. The New York Knicks will hold their parade in the same route the Rangers did back in 94. It's called the Canyon of Heroes. It's in Lower Manhattan. About 5 to 6 million people expected to descend upon New York City tomorrow. All right, Father's Day is coming up, and I'll tell you what, dads deserve a day at Lagoon. This Father's Day, ESPN 700 is giving you the chance to win a 4-pack of passes to Lagoon, the place where thrills, family fun, and great memories come together. Whether dad's a roller coaster junkie or just wants a day with the family, we've got you covered. Listen all week around noon and try to score 4 passes to Lagoon. It's Father's Day fun from Lagoon and Utah's home for sports, ESPN 700. All right, excited for this. We get to do it once, maybe twice a year. The voice of the NBA and the New York Knicks, Mike Breen, is going to join us coming up on the other side. We'll do a little jazz draft and Walker Kessler later on. Tony Jones, Pablo Mastroeni. We got a great Wednesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700.
Box to Wemby. Wemby tries a three, puts it up, off the mark. Anunoby the rebound. It's over. It's over. Knick fans, this is not a dream. Your long, long wait has ended. Go ahead and cry. After 53 years, the Knicks are finally NBA champions once again.
Over 5 million people expected to descend on Lower Manhattan tomorrow for the championship parade, crowning the New York Knicks as your NBA champ. Our next guest is the voice of the NBA, but longtime voice of the New York Knicks and native New Yorker. Always a pleasure to welcome in Mike Breen to the program. Mr. Breen, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
You can just call me Mr. Breen.
I feel like I have to out of respect, my friend.
Oh, stop it. Meanwhile, you said 5 million. There's chance of some storms tomorrow, so I think it might be 4.9 million.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Well, I mean, look, I cannot, I wish I was there. I was there for the Rangers parade in 94, but I cannot wait to watch the coverage. I'd have to ask you, I would imagine you're going to be attending, if not on one of the floats, yes?
Yes, I'm very privileged and blessed to be on one of the floats. It's been a crazy, as you know, Spence, from your time in New York. The teams mean so much to the fans. I mean, they mean so much to all the fan bases. But when you put together, over half a century of no championships, the outpouring of emotion is been nonstop. And you know how news cycles today. The next thing happens, and the previous thing is off the front page. It's not off the front page. It's what everybody's talking about. It's from a sports fan, it's a sports fan's dream, what happened, and they're taking full advantage of it.
Look, I know that you are a pros pro, but I just have to ask the question this way. How were you able to maintain your composure throughout this run as a lifelong New Yorker, as a longtime voice of that team, just to do the job that you need to do, to not sound like you're cheering for one team or the other? It's a art form, Mike, that I feel like is lost. So much Homer broadcasting. I don't know if it's the owners mandating it, but I don't think anybody would know that you are a lifelong fan of this team if they listen to you call a game. What's the secret sauce there?
Well, that's very kind of you, Spencer. Thank you. Number one, I had somebody to watch do it prior to me. Marv Albert did it for years and showed all of us how you do that, not only in terms of just overall basketball play-by-play, but calling games on a national level while one of the teams is a team that you call on the local level. So that was great for me to study and to watch. And then just over time, I've done it for a lot of years, and I'm sure some years I didn't do it as well as others, but you're expected to do a professional job. You have a responsibility to the audience. You have a responsibility to your people who are on your crew, announcers, producers, directors, everybody in the truck. And I'm glad you think that. I hope that's the way. I wouldn't be telling the truth if I said that I didn't want the Knicks to win a championship in my lifetime. And it was thrilling to be front row seat for it. But the job is still the job. And I think that's what we all strive to be at our best at that. And hopefully most people felt that way.
At any point, did you find yourself overcome with maybe emotion or maybe a moment that struck you a little bit? I mean, it's been a number of years since I've lived back there, but as soon as the buzzer sounded, I was a little bit surprised at kind of the emotions that came in, kind of out of me, and get on a FaceTime call with my brothers, who you all know, and we still very much feel like the Knicks are the team that we were raised with and cheer for. Did you find yourself getting emotional at all? Was there one moment that overcame you a little bit?
Well, no, I had emotion in my call. I thought, and I think you can tell. But quite honestly, whenever a team wins a championship, I have emotion because you're around those teams for pretty much the previous month, and you get to know them, and you are aware of the kind of work that went into it. Winning an NBA title is so hard, and the sacrifice that has to go into it. So I get emotional every year in the finals, but this one was a little extra. But I think it's important for me to on the air stay that way. After we went off the air, I got emotional. There was one particular thing. My wife and daughter were watching the game at home, and somebody filmed them and the final moments, and their joy was something that got me emotional because they're so invested, like any Knick fan would be in New York, and put so much time into it. So to be able to share that joy with your family, that's, as you know as well as anybody, for crying out loud, it's a very special thing, and it's a bond for life. It's what's great about sports is fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, mothers and daughters, mothers and sons, your best friend, your cousin, the guy you work with. You all share in this caring for a certain team, no matter what city you're in. And when it comes to when you win it all, you want to share it with as many people as possible. So being able to see all those people share it together, being at the arena and seeing the team share it together, the Knicks fans that were there, it's just every year for me, it's a wonderful thing to be able to witness.
When throughout the course of the season, Mike, did you start to think they had something pretty special? Look, I mean, of course, I'm a Tom Thibodeau guy. So when they decided to move on from Tom and brought in Mike Brown, I was a little bit skeptical. And obviously, anybody that was skeptical was wrong. And Mike deserves a lot of credit for doing a great job. And they win the NBA Cup, and then there was this 3 or 4 week, situation where it didn't look great, and the East felt like it was open. Boston gets Tatum back, and what's going to happen with Philly, and can Cleveland figure it out with Harden and Mitchell? But when did you start to get an idea? Okay, maybe this is a team that could have something to say about the title this year.
Well, first off, I'm glad you brought up Tibbs because the direction of the franchise changed when he was hired, and he did a fantastic job. And it was a risky move for sure because he had led them to their first conference final in 25 years. And that's not unusual to have a coach lose it then. But, clearly Mike Brown pressed all the right buttons and did just an extraordinary job this year. But it was not an easy regular season. There were times during the regular season where you started to wonder, okay, are they as good as last year's team? I'm not so sure. But then there were also stretches where they clearly looked like their ceiling was better than last year's team, and they had some stretches where they played like that. But even I remember the game they played March 31st in Houston, and they lost. 3-game road trip, 3 straight losses. And Josh Hart said after the game, and Josh has such a great beat on the team and feel of the pulse of the team. He said, we are trending in the wrong direction. And that's less than 2 weeks to go in the regular season. So the whole season was about growing pains, learning from each other, learning what works, learning what doesn't work. And that continued. And when it worked, man, it was beautiful. But I always thought, even through the ups and downs of the regular season, that they could come out of the East. I thought they had potential. Their ceiling was to be the best team in the East. The Western opponent was a different story. OKC was just on a rampage. San Antonio, 262 wins, one 162, the other one, 64. And even like a Denver team. So that was the concern. Yeah, they could get to the finals, but boy, is it going to be tough for them to win. But the way they played in the playoffs changed everything. And to me, the first sign of that was Game 6 in Atlanta. They're up 3-2, chance to clinch. They had Game 7 at home in their pocket, so it wasn't a must-win, and they crushed them. It was like, we're not waiting for Game 7. We're taking care of business now. They did the same thing in Philadelphia in the second round, up 3-0 on the road, Game 5 in their pocket. But they nope, we're taking Bears, and they crushed the Sixers. And they did the same thing in Cleveland. So that showed me that they were so mentally dialed in that they had a chance in the finals when they got there. But during the regular season, this is a very long-winded answer to your question. During the regular season, you're like, okay, I don't know. They have their ups and downs. Can they get it together in time? And clearly they did.
So, look, by his own admission and the admission of his father, nobody thought Jalen Brunson was going to be close to this. I mean, there are plenty of people that didn't think he was an NBA player. He was a second-round pick. Of course, we had a front row seat out here when maybe maybe the Knicks saw a little something when Luka was hurt and Jalen became the primary guy for Dallas. But he was a 16, 17-point-a-night guy. And the Knicks make the signing, and they're criticized for it. Like, they overpaid for him. He leaves a bunch of money on the table to give the Knicks the ability to close, to kind of fill out the roster with the players they needed. and he scores 45 points on the road in an NBA Finals closeout game. I mean, having a front row seat to this 4-year Jalen Brunson evolution, Mike, what's that been like?
It's been amazing because not only is he an unbelievably talented player, but he's a great leader, and he's one of the finest young men I've ever met in 30-plus years of covering the NBA. So his character is a big part of what makes him so good. And I've said this a bunch in the last couple of weeks, but we don't know how to measure somebody's mental toughness. We don't know how to measure somebody's will. You know, we can look at their shooting percentages. We can look at their, 100-meter speed and all that kind of stuff. But you don't know what's in a player's heart. And he clearly has a heart that's probably a little bigger than most, because that's what sets him apart. He moves on from bad performances. He moves on from great performances onto the next thing, because all he cares about is winning. And I once mentioned on the air that I thought his mental toughness was that of on a Kobe Bryant level. And I got criticized for it. I mean, it's blasphemy to say anybody's on Kobe's level in terms of mental toughness, the Mamba mentality. But he's there. And the season that he had this year, capped off by this playoff run, it's one of the great individual seasons I've ever seen.
Now, of course, Jalen, unanimous MVP, but this was far from a one-man show, even though at times it felt like, 45 points out of 94. It's not like this game was 140 to 130, but I want to ask you about Cat, who really has changed the narrative surrounding him throughout the course of this playoff run. I mean, the knock on him was always like incredibly talented for his size, doesn't necessarily guard, and doesn't get it done in the spring. And he completely flipped most of it around. Now, the foul trouble is the foul trouble, but he was so key to what they were able to do. He had their best net rating, Mike. I'm sure you know that, when he was on the floor. Now, a lot of that is because of the foul trouble, and he came back, with a lot of energy and rested. But I feel like if there's one player that's changed the way he's viewed around the league with this run, it might be Karl Anthony Towns. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a career-defining playoff run for him. And what he did was extraordinary from a standpoint of, he changed the way he played. And it was discussed with the coaching staff, and he wanted to play that way. So he averaged, during the playoffs, I don't think it was even 17 points per game. If you would have told me before the playoffs that Karl Anthony Towns was going to average 17 points per game during a playoff run, my answer would have been, did they get knocked out in the first round or the second round? It was almost like the only way they have to win a championship is if he can come close to matching Jalen Brunson's production. And he didn't have to do it because he turned into this playmaker extraordinaire and a stout defender. He changed the whole, as you said, the narrative of who he is. And the key to him was, it was his third conference final. He came short the last two, and it ate at him that he didn't get to the mountaintop. All he wanted to do was win. And you hear about this with every championship team. Somebody has to sacrifice. Well, he sacrificed in one area and excelled in another area, and that took the team to another level.
So, there's LJ's 4-point play. There's Allen Houston's leaner in Miami. There's, Ewing's tip-in against the Pacers. OG's tip-in, I guess it's right there. And look, I was just stunned. So I want your thoughts on that play in a vacuum. And then also, Mike, it was 72-49. My son, who is now about to turn 25, I know that's going to shock you.
25.
Yes. Yeah, he's.
Oh my goodness.
My son.
You make me feel so old.
I know. I'm sorry. I mean, he's about to be the age that I was when I met you. He was at a watch party because he's living back east, and he was at a watch party on the Upper West Side, and he FaceTimed me, and he said, should I leave? Can they come back? And I said it would take a perfect combination of events for them to be able to actually pull this off. Mostly I just wanted him to stay and have fun because in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's no shot here. But your takeaway is watching them come back from that deficit and then in the moment, watching OG tip that ball in. What was that night like for you?
Probably the loudest I've ever heard the Garden, and there's a lot of candidates for that. Again, it showed the mental toughness of their leader and of the team, because for most of the comeback, the thought was, okay, they're starting to play better. Maybe they could gain a little momentum going into the next game, because San Antonio was not just beating them, they were embarrassing them. It was a bludgeoning. I think I used that word on the air. The Spurs were playing at such a level, and the Knicks just weren't matching it. It was incredible. And again, that's what you thought. All right, maybe they can build some momentum for the next game. And then they cut it to 15 at the end of the third, and you're thinking, okay. But then all of a sudden, it's back up to 20, and they still came back. And to have, the quietest player on the team made the loudest play in the history of the franchise, because it certainly ranks up there as the greatest play in franchise history, because if he doesn't put that in, they lose the game, and it's 2-2, and that changes everything, as we know. So that's one of those games where 50 years from now, there's going to be not 19,800 or whatever the capacity is. There's going to be 200,000 people who are going to say, yeah, I was at that game, because that's how special it was.
You had referenced Josh Hart, and one of the things I love about this team is I really think, like, obviously I do this for a living, so at times you kind of have to take the fandom away just to kind of analyze what you're seeing in order to cover it. I really feel like, and look, whenever a New York team wins it, the New York stuff for people that aren't into the New York stuff can get a little extra. I understand that. But I really feel like this is a unbelievably likable group. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, lottery pick. Mikal was a lottery pick too, but really a bunch of players that you could characterize as kind of cast-offs that have been elsewhere. And Josh Hart might embody that as much, if not more, than any of the other players. I mean, Jalen is Jalen. But what does Josh Hart mean to this Knick team, Mike?
Just the catalyst, his presence, because he's not afraid to be candid and honest with teammates, with coaches, with media about this is good, this is not good. The willingness to sacrifice. He could care less if he scored a point. And we could see that he can score, obviously, but he could care less. And if a particular night meant getting 15 rebounds or 9 assists or 3 steals, or make the opponent's best wing shooter have a rough shooting night, it didn't matter. And that sets the tone for that kind of sacrifice. And it also shows the brilliance of Leon Rose from a standpoint of all 5 starters he acquired, and only one of them was a star, and that's Karl Anthony Towns. The other 4, all, talented, good, but none of them you would call a star before they came. And because of the way they play together and the connection that they have, that's why they win a title. The NBA history of the league is littered with teams that had a great collection of talent that did nothing. But Leon Rose and this team understood that it's all about 5 that will work together and do whatever it takes to win. It's still a 5-man game. It's the beauty of basketball when 5 players are operating as one. Man, it's such a cool thing to watch.
Does it remind you of at all like the Knick 90s teams that I grew up on and loved? They did not play like this. And the teams in the 70s that won the championships with Clyde and Willis Reed and Bill Bradley and Dave DeBusschere, they played this way, correct? Does this team remind you of them at all?
Well, I'll say yes, but I was a kid then, so I don't remember it as well. But I will. My wonderful TV partner, Walt Clyde Frazier, on that team, this is the first team that he has said reminds him of his championship team.
Huh. And
he's also, for the first time ever, compared a player to Willis Reed, and it's Jalen Rose. In terms of his mental toughness, his leadership, his ability to be in the clutch. So if it's good enough for Clyde, it's certainly good enough for me.
Tell me what it was like to watch it through his eyes. I mean, Clyde was the first person I heard say, I feel like this is a team of destiny. And look, Mike, you know this as well as anybody, the PTSD of being a Knicks fan. Like, I didn't believe they won it after they won it. I'm like, did this really happen? I didn't think they could. And I was very, very skeptical. But you know, for a guy like that who walks on water in New York because of what he has meant to the team and being a two-time champ, he's a proud guy. But did you kind of just feel like he was basking in this? What was it like to watch it through the eyes of Walt Frazier?
Yeah, he loved every second. He was so annoyed by the years, and there were a lot of them, where they just weren't playing good team basketball. It bothered him. And I was afraid he was going to retire because he just wasn't enjoying the job as much because he appreciates good team ball. He appreciates hard work and players that play hard. But he fell in love with this team like everybody did. And to see him so rejuvenated the past couple of years, and he doesn't just throw out bouquets freely. You've got to do something special to get him praise you. And between Brunson and the rest of the roster and the team, he was just so overjoyed by it. And for me, one of the blessings of my life is being his partner and becoming his lifetime friend. To see him like that it's just a wonderful thing.
Wonder if you have any moments you could share with those 90s Knicks players that were there. I mean, I know Allen Houston works for the team. I think John does too. I don't know if any of the other ones are in an official capacity, but seeing Sprewell and Patrick, and we'll leave the Oakley stuff off air. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. It just kind of is such a bummer that he can't be there. But throughout the course of this run, what was it like to kind of see those old 90s Knicks in the building kind of celebrating with everybody else?
It was emotional, especially with Patrick. Nobody played harder night after night than Patrick Ewing. Some played just as hard, but nobody played harder. And he came short in 94, so short. And then in 99, he couldn't play because he was hurt. And the look on his face, the contentment and the joy after the game, and there was one, they made him take a picture with the Larry O'Brien trophy. And he was holding it with such tenderness, and he looked up and said, "I finally got my ring."
Oh, nice.
That was one of the times where I was like, got the lump in the throat because he was the ultimate warrior. The team has brought him back, and he played a role in it. They consulted him on basketball decisions. He worked with some of the players, helped the big men. So he felt so good about his role and just felt so good for the organization that he gave so much to.
We do have one Jazz tie, and I'll tell you what, Jordan Clarkson, while he was here, became a big part of this community, and the Jazz loved him. I mean, of course, it's a different time now for this organization. After 4 years of rebuilding, they are going to try to move forward and try to win some games next year. But I wonder, as far as the Jordan Clarkson piece of this for our Jazz fan listeners that really became endeared to him, what's that angle like for you, Jordan Clarkson getting a ring?
I didn't know him well as a person. I knew him as a great scorer off the bench. And there was one game last year when he was playing for the Jazz. He came to the Garden, and the Jazz it was a struggle. And every time he got the ball, he threw it up in the basket. Some terrible shots. And I was critical of him, not over the top, but I was critical of the game that he had. And then when they signed him, like Knick fans were razzing me, saying, "Oh, the guy that you were critical, you become a Knick." But you never know a player until you're around them a lot. And I have grown such respect for him as a man and for a teammate. He's beloved by his teammates. He changed who he was. They didn't need him to be necessarily a scorer off the bench. He became a pesky defender, an offensive rebounder, a hustle player. And he would do anything. And he'd go stretches where he didn't play for 8 games, and then all of a sudden he's playing 25 minutes, and he was ready every time. He was part of a bench that they don't win at all without the bench. And I'm so happy for him because I've gotten to know him a bit, and I'm just so impressed. And I remember asking Will Hardy about him the first time the Knicks played the Jazz, and Will Hardy is such a fan of Clarkson. And he said when he came in, he was a rookie head coach, and he had no status or credibility in the locker room. He said, but Jordan Clarkson embraced him, and because Clarkson embraced him, that gave him credibility in the locker room, and he'll never forget that.
Yeah, I know they love him over there. You referenced 99. In 1999, a 21-year-old center started his dynastic run against the New York Knicks named Tim Duncan. And I'll tell you what, Mike, of course, we had Rudy Gobert out here for 9 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, a picture surfaced on the intranet of Rudy in France playing against a teenager. And I went, wait, that guy is 4 inches taller than Rudy. Who is this kid? So, look, we're out here in the Western Conference, and a lot of people thought that this might be Victor Wembanyama's time, even though that would not have fit in lockstep with the way this league works. But it might be his time now moving forward. So what did you make of watching and calling these games and the kind of player Victor Wembanyama is, and what do you think he's going to learn from this, and what do you think it looks like now moving forward?
He's going to learn a lot. He's received a bunch of criticism, first off, for not shaking hands, and he should have done that. That was a mistake, but he's 22 years old. He's one of those players that winning is consuming him. So when he loses, he takes it hard. But he'll learn that it's okay. It doesn't show a weakness after you lose to go and look the person in the eye who beat you and say, respect. So he should have done that. But that's okay. Everybody learns. You forget, this guy's under a massive spotlight every single time he takes the floor. Every single time he plays, everything he does off the floor, he's under this massive spotlight. And I don't think many people understand how difficult that is to do on a daily basis. We were fortunate that we had a number of times a chance to sit with him and talk. I'm so impressed with him in terms of his poise and his thought process. He's going to be a great, great player. He's got a chance to be one of the greats. A lot has to happen for that to occur, but I think he's up to the task. And yeah, he had some struggles, and he had some pretty big failures. That turnover, a missed shot at the end that could have won. But I think it will make him stronger. And so many of the great players had failure team-wise and individual-wise early in their career, and that's what makes them strong. So I root for the young man because he's got an amazing talent, and it's not easy to be under that daily spotlight that he's under.
Before I set you loose, Mike, and I've already taken up too much of your time, so I really appreciate it. But since we are here in Salt Lake City, there's both excitement for this upcoming season because the Jazz have the number 2 pick. We're going to see the draft next week. They traded for Jaren Jackson Jr. Will Hardy, as you referenced, is a really bright young coach who is now going to be allowed to play his best players moving forward. But kind of intertwined in the excitement is this underlying anxiety as to whether or not what New York just saw is something that Salt Lake could ever see. And obviously Oklahoma City is good. San Antonio is amazing and young. But I wonder what you would say as far as the overall state of the league. We have 8 different champs in 8 years. We have Denver, we have Milwaukee, we have some smaller markets, Oklahoma City winning championships, about just the potential for Jazz fans to experience what Knicks fans are experiencing right now.
Just enjoy the step-by-step process. It doesn't happen overnight. Every once in a while it might, but it doesn't. You've got to go through difficult times. Like, for example, this Knicks team, they lost some heartbreaking playoff games, but they became battle-tested. And that's what the NBA is. You've got to go through your growing pains. You got to go through the adversity. You got to go through failures. And that's what makes you tough, because once you get to the playoffs, to win 4 series in a row is so difficult. And just enjoy the process. Like, the last several years have all been enjoyable with the Knicks. They've taken baby steps, then big steps, then obviously the big leap. And that's, from a fan standpoint, as long as you have hope and that things are going in the right direction in terms of acquisition of talent and identity of a team, that's the things that you can enjoy, because that's what makes, when you finally get to that mountaintop as a fan, that's what makes it all worthwhile, because you were there while they were building to that process.
Mike, thank you, sir. We don't have a ton of ties to our years there anymore, but I can tell you I have screenshots of Mike Breen calls that were sent around the Checketts family thread, and a simple bang is sent from time to time in the brothers thread. So it's just a pleasure to continue to listen and watch you do what you do. And I can't thank you enough for your time today. Thank you, sir.
Well, the Checketts family has a very special place in my heart, so please pass along my love to all of them.
Will do. Thank you, Mike. Mike Breen, voice of the NBA, voice of the New York Knicks. We get to do that about once or twice a year, and it's always such a treat. He is, I would call him my main mentor if I could just for a moment. When I decided that I wanted to do this for a living, I called my dad, and he said, call Mike. First person to call, and Mike spent an hour on the phone with me, gave me a bunch of advice that I still keep in mind to this day. I am biased, but I think he's the best in the business at what he does, and I always appreciate his time. Voice of the NBA. For ABC and ESPN, of course, longtime voice of the New York Knicks. Brought to you today by our friends at Advanced Window Products. Now, summer window special going on right now. $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. Discounts can now be prorated for fewer than 10 windows. Home Court Advantage, local manufacturing and a local Utah window and door manufacturing company selling direct to the public, no middleman, so you save a bunch of money. You guys know the deal. This is Nate Orchard, Jake Weber. Great dudes. Nate, of course, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah. If your house is hot in the summer, even though you have the air conditioning on, it's because of your windows and you're wasting a lot of money. If it's cold in the winter, even though you have your heater on, same deal. So take advantage of this special right now. They build it right, they install it right, and they guarantee it for life. Lifetime warranty coverage that can be transferable to the next homeowner if you're looking to sell your home. So give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or at advancedwindows.com. All right, we'll catch a break. Coming up next, the latest on the Walker Kessler Utah Jazz conversations. NBA draft is 6 days away. We'll keep you up to date on the World Cup going on right now. Tony Jones will join us. Pablo Mastroeni will join us. Then we'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show, and we will say goodnight at 6 right here on ESPN 700. England leads Croatia 3-2, group stage, Group L here in the World Cup. They have been peppering Croatia's keepers, had a really good second half. Croatia's a really good team, though. This game is far from over. It has moved into the 77th minute. Earlier today, DR Congo got its first goal and its first point in the history of the World Cup as they were able to take care of Ronaldo and Portugal, one of the favorites to win the thing. 1-1 was your final there, so some really exciting World Cup play. If you missed Mike Breen, just awesome stuff with the voice of the NBA for ABC and ESPN. We'll bring that back a little bit later. Of course, you can find it up on the website. Some interesting stuff with Mike near the end about the current state of the league and where we find ourselves with Utah Jazz. So let's dig into this just a little bit here during this segment. We're going to bring in Tony Jones, our buddy who covers the Sixers now, but longtime Jazz reporter from The Athletic. Tony will join us, and then we'll do some World Cup and some RSL with Pablo Mastroeni. I want to remind you that my interview with Kyle Beckerman is live with my podcast at St. Clair at KUTV. It's called Reality Check with Spence Checketts. We talk some fun World Cup conversation, and then a little old school RSL, as Kyle was the captain in 2009 when Real Salt Lake lifted MLS Cup. You can check that out wherever you get your pods. All right, Porter, let me bring you in here. This reminds me a little bit of how we were discussing Rudy Gobert during the final few years of Rudy's career here in Utah and what the Jazz were going to have to pay him as he was winning Defensive Player of the Year awards and making all-star teams. It just became very, very clear that if the Jazz were going to hang on to Gobert, they were going to have to pay him max money. The conversation comes down to, in the modern day and age of the NBA, a true pivot, which is what Walker Kessler is. What is he worth as far as, what you want to be paying him, what that number is on your salary cap, and then what is he worth on the open market, okay? Because here's the reality of what an important decision this is. So the qualifying offer is just over $7 million. I think the cap hold is around 14. He could sign a qualifying offer and then bet on himself. That's a very risky thing, especially after coming off an injury. And Tim McMahon, who joined us yesterday and basically broke everything down the way he has been, that was then aggregated by bad actors and other people, also brought into play that Keontae George is eligible for an extension this year. Okay. So and Tim is reporting the Jazz have offered Walker Kessler 5 years, $140 million. To me, that is more than fair. I understand that the job of an agent is to negotiate and try to get as much money as you possibly can. And maybe there's a side to this where Walker and his people don't want 5 full years. They want maybe a shorter deal so then he can get paid more later on. I don't know. But if they sign Walker Kessler, if we operate off the hypothetical that they give Walker Kessler a 5-year, $140 million contract, and Walker signs it and he's back, and they elect to extend Keontae George, which I don't think they'll do. I think they're going to do the same thing with Keontae that they did with Walker, and that is have him play this year out, see if that growth was real, and then try to deal with it next offseason like they're dealing with the stuff right now. Larry Markkinen next year makes $46 million. Jaren Jackson Jr. makes $49 million. Ace Bailey's on the books for $9 million. John Konchar's on the books for $6 million. Cody Williams is on the book for $6 million. Walker would be on the books for close to $30 million. Keontae at $6 million. And then some other smaller pieces. Kyle Filipowski, Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier, all on their rookie deals. You add a number 2 pick to the equation, which right away would be, I think, $10, $11 million. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying what the Jazz would be saying to all of us is that this is our team. This is the group. Now, could there be trades? Of course. But as far as what would be on the books, money allocated, the Jazz are already close to luxury tax, if not over the first apron, if they sign Walker to this and then they bring Keontae back. They're basically saying, okay, this is the team we're riding with. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's what we would be facing.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is part of the big reason that the Jazz are, at least at this moment, not offering Walker Kessler the max amount that he would be due, right? And to be honest with you, I even think the number that they have offered is not only competitive for what Walker would get on the open market, but it might be a little bit too much if you're trying to build a championship roster. It leaves you with very little flexibility. If you sign him to this and look at some of the extensions you have coming, this is a team that, as you mentioned, is pretty much complete. Adding in whoever you draft here in these next few cycles. And I think that is why there is clearly some hesitation from Jazz brass to concede to Walker and his agent's dealings. Now, as you mentioned, this is uniform. This is not anything out of the ordinary. Any free agent who is looking for an extension is, whether personally or through his agent, going to have these feelings, and those feelings will be, let's say, disseminated through the media in some form or fashion. None of this is out of the ordinary. But yeah, when you just look at the roster construction of the Utah Jazz, if you do sign Walker Kessler to a deal that is upwards of $25 to $30 million, you are pretty much there. That is your squad, that is your roster, and you're running it back. And I don't know. I gotta think there is some hesitation when you look at it in that picture, when this is a guy coming off a major surgery who is still, again, we've had this conversation in Salt Lake City before. In fact, it was about a decade-long conversation about allotting that amount of your cap to a defensive-centered, I would say, not necessarily a bad offensive player, but a limited offensive player in that role. Putting that much money towards the cap into a player of that identity is something in today's NBA almost never results in a championship. Now, doesn't mean it can't result in 50 wins, 60 wins in a good team. But when you start looking at it in the lens of trying to win an NBA title, I wonder how a lot of fans think about, yes, getting this deal done, keeping Walker in-house, but then realizing on the back end of that, you got no flexibility left. That's an interesting conundrum that we have definitely discussed in this market before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a time where we were debating whether or not you want to give a non-offensive pivot 30% of your salary cap, but you were going to have to if you wanted to keep Rudy, and the Jazz ended up paying Rudy what they had to pay him to keep him. Was that the right move? Probably. It was the only move, right? Unless you were going to move on from him or trade him. But with all the developmental processes in place that allowed Rudy, and Rudy deserves the bulk of the credit, to put in the work to become the player that he was, you kind of had to pay him what you did. But by making that decision, did you corner yourself into a team that, yes, won a ton of regular season games, but was ousted in the playoffs by Terrence Mann and Maxi Kleber? Like, it wasn't like it was Kawhi Leonard and Luka Doncic. Like, the playoff failures of that team, very well documented. I have always been one that was always hesitant to put that at the feet of Gobert. But this is somewhat similar. It's not a perfect parallel, because ultimately the highest paid players on your team will be Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. And maybe a lot of Jazz fans have forgotten how great Lauri is because he hasn't been allowed to play basketball for the past few years. I think he's missed 104 games the past 3 years. But the other angle that needs to be discussed for people that believe the sky is falling, the Jazz have all the control here. Walker doesn't have the leverage. He doesn't have the control. As Tim talked about on the show yesterday, restricted free agency is very good for the team, and it's very bad for the player. Walker really doesn't have much of a choice. Unless he wants to go Kawhi Leonard, San Antonio Spurs, I am not playing here. And Kawhi had already signed a couple of max deals, so he didn't really need the money. Nobody thought Kawhi was going to do what he did because that was somewhat unprecedented. Greg Popovich said, you are under contract, you will show up and play, and he didn't. So they had to trade him to Toronto. Even though he wanted to go to LA, they sent him to Toronto, and of course that worked for the Raptors. They won a championship. I have zero belief that Walker Kessler is going to take such a strong stand. Now, that's not off of any intimate knowledge of where Walker's head is at. That's just my belief as far as what a young player is in this ecosystem. He has not signed a big money deal yet. So to really power play this deal, I think right now is overplaying your hand. Because even if Walker is, if they're going to take the hard line that we are not signing this reported 5-year, $140 million deal, and the Jazz say, all right, cool, go find your offer sheet, they're not going to find an offer sheet that the Jazz won't match. I don't believe that personally. If there's a worst case scenario here, if let's operate off the hypothetical that all of this panic and all of this noise is actually real, and Walker doesn't want to play for the Jazz, he believes he's being disrespected, and he wants to play for the Lakers. The worst ending, in my opinion, to this would be a sign and trade where the Jazz are able to get some good young pieces and some draft capital, and they send Walker to the team that he wants to play for, and they're able to get some value in return. I don't think that's going to happen. And by the way, we do have some examples of players who tried to basically overplay their hand a little bit with Donovan Mitchell trying to force his way to New York, and Danny's like, cool, you now live in Cleveland. So, I don't know that Danny and Austin Ainge are in the mood to play these games, and I don't think they would be so inclined just to give Walker what he wants, especially at this stage of his career. And again, let me underscore, 5 years, $140 million is incredibly fair. It would make Walker the highest paid center who has never made an all-star team in the history of the NBA. It's somewhat surprising to me, and I'm sure it's agent-driven as much as anything else, that deal is not something that they see fit. I mean, Tim is reporting that talks have stalled, indicating they're like insulted by it, which surprises me because I find that deal to be more than fair. Go ahead.
Just wanted to add, I think, as you mentioned, what worst case scenario could be, I think what could be a really good scenario for the Utah Jazz is that they do allow Walker to test the market. And then, completely honest with you, I think there's a less than, I think there's a more than likely chance that market may come down a little bit, right? And it's not an indictment on Walker Kessler as a player. I think he's a good piece. I just think that, number one, he's coming off the major injury that we've talked about, and Spence, the market money available this offseason specifically, and I would say maybe 2 to 3 teams that are actually going to go out and look for a center. Don't see many good fits or many good matches that have the kind of cap room to offer him a bunch of money. So again, I think it's a hardball play from the agent because he sees that and wants to get this deal, I'm sure, done in a fashion that gets Walker a generational contract. But I think the way that this could backfire a little bit is if the Jazz say, hey, okay, go ahead, get an offer sheet. When it's less than what we already offered you, we'll maybe come down to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, teams with cap space this offseason, and these are projections because there's some cap holds and decisions that have to be made. The Bulls have about 54 to 60 mil. The Lakers, depending on what happens with LeBron, and by the way, the reports are the Lakers and LeBron are actually engaging. And look, I know he's 41. He was 21, 7, and 6 last year. It's like 7 dudes in the league, okay? But if they decide that, okay, LeBron, go do your thing in Cleveland or wherever to finish your career, the Lakers could have about 45 to 50 mil. The Nets, because, of course, 35 to 47 mil. The Hawks could have a little bit of money to play with. So there are 3 to 4 teams with a decent amount of space, but it's not the fertile ground that it typically is. And look, that's why I say overplayed your hand. If this is the deal, if they think that's an insulting offer, if you're Danny and Austin, I think you dare them. Go ahead. Go find something that's more lucrative than this. Now, of course, the danger is they do, and maybe they front load the offer so the Jazz have some difficult decisions to make about whether or not that makes sense financially, and then you try to engage in a sign and trade, I guess. It does remind me, I had a friend once who he was in data entry, and he was essentially a non-essential employee at his work. Mm-hmm. And he told us, he's like, hey, I'm going to go ask for a raise. I've decided, I've been here a number of years. All he does is sit at a computer. Now I'm sure that job is obsolete. This was a number of years ago. He said, I've decided that I'm going to go ask for a raise. So he goes into his boss's office, says, look, been here for like 6 years, haven't had a raise, feel like I'm doing a good job. So I'm asking for a raise. I think I've earned a raise. And his boss said, no, and actually you're fired. To which he said, you know what? We'll go back to the other deal. Let's just go back to the original arrangement.
Sorry, buddy. Robot on his way.
Exactly. But you got to be careful. Like in negotiations, if you don't have leverage, you got to be careful. And I think your point's a good one. I can't guarantee that there's a better offer out there. But 5 years, $140 million for a center that's never made the All-Star game and is coming off shoulder surgery? That feels very fair to me, Porter. I'm kind of team Jazz here on this.
No, I'm with you. In fact, when I, first saw that Walker had either declined or is not almost jumping to sign a $140 million deal, I said, what's the guarantee discussion? Because that's, at least in total money, that is as much as I could ever expect a Walker Kessler to get this deal. Now, Spence, if this was a contract year and he was coming off an all-star season and he was completely healthy, then yeah, we're having a different conversation. But it's almost, as we've talked about, it almost just seems like this is all negotiation stuff, all negotiation agent tactics. And when it comes down to it, the market is going to set the value on Walker Kessler. And I even think the numbers that Tim McMahon put out are a little high for what I would be comfortable paying the market value to, not just because of who Walker Kessler is, but also because of, if I'm the Jazz and I'm looking at my timeline and I'm looking at players that I may want to add, you're done. That is the team you have. You've lost kind of your flexibility in the roster department, and I would hesitate to do that. And again, I was one of the ones who was very, very much on that camp during the Rudy Gobert stuff. And Rudy, to his credit, was an all-star, was a defensive player of the year, was someone who was getting better and better and better. There was just a ceiling there, and then there was also the context of what percentage that is against the cap. And I just think that if you're going to put that much money towards a front court player, they're going to have to bring not only rim protection, but also legitimate go do it on your own on the offensive side. Make something happen on the offensive end of the floor. And Walker has shown small improvements as a shooter, but he's just not the kind of offensive player that I would be comfortable putting that much money towards. And I think that we're going to see kind of exactly that play out when he hits the market, which at this point I kind of expect to be the deal. I think you're going to see one or two teams probably extend some sort of offer sheet, and I don't want to give exact numbers, but I think it's going to be less than $28 million a year. And I think it's going to be less than 5 years, 140. I don't think a team's going to be willing to go that long on a deal for Walker Kessler, and they may be regretting the hand they played a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. The one piece of leverage they do have is Walker can say, you need bodies to take care of the alien that plays in San Antonio. You do. I mean, I heard somebody say the two teams that they believe most well-equipped to handle Victor Wembanyama are New York and Utah, with Walker, of course.
And I would say, I don't know that we have the proof that Walker's that guy yet either. Yes, he has the length. There's not many guys who are 7 feet plus and can move in the NBA, and you're always going to put stock in that. But, Spence, there's a bunch of prospects coming up through the ranks that you can draft and have on rookie deals, that if your only argument is you need a body for that guy, go draft one. I know that doesn't guarantee that he's going to be to the level of a defensive player of the year, but the Jazz have a defensive player of the year on their roster, and his name's not Walker Kessler Jr. or Walker Kessler. So
Dave Fox would remind you the Jazz beat San Antonio last year.
They did.
Walker didn't play.
and Walker was out. I don't know, man. It's a tough one. He's a good player. He's a really good player.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's a 5-year, $140 million player. And from all reports, the Jazz have offered him that. Interesting stuff.
All right, so England has it, well, not advanced, but they did win. 4-2 over Croatia. Harry Kane with a brace of his own. The stars have shown out, except for Ronaldo, the only one who has not really played well so far. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. More on this because Tony Jones will join us coming up next. We also have Pablo Mastroeni later on for some World Cup. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour and say goodnight at 6 on ESPN 700. Special thanks to the voice of the NBA, Mike Breen, for his time today. Not just the voice of the NBA, but of course the voice of the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks are your 2026 NBA champions. Have a feeling our next guest likes the way that sentence sounds. Hello, Tony Jones. How are you, buddy?
I got real beef with you and Porter.
What? Why?
How you going to bring me on after Mike Breen? Like, how can I follow that up?
Because you are on par with the legendary Mike Breen. That's the esteem we hold you in, Tony Jones.
That is ridiculous. By the way, I just want to let you know, my son, Jalen Brunson Ananobi Mikael Bridges Jones, may be born next February.
Congratulations on that, T. I got to know, where were you when the final buzzer went off, and what went through your mind and your body?
Well, what went through my body was me streaking with clothes on in my parking lot of my place, screaming, "Go Knicks," sweating profusely, like, I just had Walter White sinus. Yeah, it was great.
Tony, isn't streaking with clothes on just running?
It can be misconstrued, but I was, like I said, I was on a high, so I didn't know. I know I had some clothes on. I just didn't know what I had on.
I gotta ask you if you ever thought you'd see the day, because I honestly didn't think I would. I honestly,
not.
Yeah, I didn't think I would, man.
Absolutely not. I never thought I'd see the day. I never thought I'd see the day. I thought I would die without the New York Knicks winning a championship. Like, I thought that the Knicks hated me so much that I would, whenever the Lord sees fit to call me home, I would go, and then the Knicks would win like that very next year.
Yeah.
So that I could not see it.
Yeah. No, I same way. I mean, when the final buzzer went off, I had this overwhelming feeling of like, is this real? I got on the phone with my brothers. We did a FaceTime call. I was texting with my son who was in New York, and a lot of, old high school buddies of mine. I would imagine this run allowed you to reconnect with a lot of people from your childhood. Yeah.
Reconnected with my people. Me and Kendall Powell were on the phone, who I grew up with on St. James Place in Brooklyn. My guy Jamal Hussein, who actually works for the Knicks in their community department. He and Kendall were neighbors growing up, and we all used to play stoop baseball. I don't know if you remember stoop baseball, from like playing stoop baseball on brownstones in Brooklyn. And we all used to play stoop baseball together and, talk about the Knicks. He texted me before the game, said, "Tonight's the night." Like, all of my people's back in Brooklyn. And then, my guy, Tim Olsen hit me with a text from Utah State. As soon as that game went final, I had so many texts and well-wishers. It was, because it's like we're truly a community, right? Like, it's more than the players. It's more than the players who were playing now and, yesteryear and yesterdecade and yester-era. It's the fans. It's us fans who have gone through a lifetime of, just real suffering. We went through John Starks shooting 2 of 18 and Pat Riley being like, "Go ahead, keep shooting." We went through Charles Smith missing 5 layups. We went through Patrick Ewing and the missed finger roll against Indiana. We went through, we went through 1999 when, the Spurs kicked our butts the last time we went to the finals. We went through, seeing our hometown hero, Stephon Marbury, come back to New York and not really play well. And, we went through 2012, with Roy Hibbert blocking, Carmelo Anthony at the rim, and then like all of the lean years. And of course, we've gone through and continue to go through James Dolan as our owner. So it belongs to all of us. It belongs to the fans. It belongs to the players. It belongs to the players first. It belongs to the fans. We all have a hand in it because we were all there through the lean times.
Yeah, well said. And I always want to be clear, I'm not a New Yorker. I'm a tri-stater. And so it probably will not surprise you that stoop baseball was not huge in New Canaan, Connecticut, Tone.
I understand. Well, we used to we would take the Browns. We would be, we live in the brownstones, and we pitched through the brownstones, and so stoop baseball was played with a tennis ball. We still broke a few windows.
All right.
But a home run is if we hit the ball on the opposing roof, and we would pitch throughout the street. Kids don't do that nowadays. Like kids today, they don't go outside, but we were outside morning and night, playing through baseball. Then we play football. That's how I met Biggie Smalls. He used to play football with us. So it was just a fun time growing up in between dodging bullets.
What kind of football player was Christopher Wallace?
He played all-time quarterback, if you could believe that.
Huh.
So he didn't usually go out with the roots. So growing up, we called him Fat Chris. That was his name. We called him Fat Chris, and he was older than us. He was about 3 or 4 years older than us. So he didn't always play with us, but sometimes he did come out and he played with us. He played all-time quarterback. He played quarterback for both sides, and he had an aura about him. He had an aura about him even that young. And then, I remember, when Juicy came out, I was I believe a freshman in college. And, my cousin David was like, yo, you know who that is? I was like, yeah, because I had moved away to Philly, so I hadn't seen him in a few years. And he was like, yo, that's Chris. I was like, no way. And it was like, look. I was like, oh, my God, that's Chris. And then my mom saw the video and was like, isn't that? And I was like, yeah. And, yes, it was Fat Chris.
Wow.
So that's what we called him.
And the rest is history. Yeah, my guess is you couldn't send Christopher Wallace on streak routes down the street. I'm not sure that foot speed was his deal.
Yeah, that's why he played all-time quarterback.
Yeah.
He wasn't really that fat. He was just big. Like, he was – he obviously, gained a lot of weight after, after he became famous. But, growing up, I mean, he was big, but, he was, we looked at him as big, kind of muscular, just a little doughy. But, yeah, that's what we called him. We called him Fat Chris growing up.
Well, we're in the hip-hop Knicks space. One of the coolest things that I've been able to do in my career is I interviewed Fife twice. He went through this kind of phase where he was trying to. He called himself the fanalist, and so if you're in the sports media ecosystem, he was willing to go on a show. I interviewed him twice, and I got to say, I thought about him pretty quickly after the Knicks won it.
Yeah, man. Rest in peace to Fife, because he wrote an entire song, one about his day, everything that went wrong about his day.
To top it off, Starks got ejected.
To top it off, Starks got ejected. And, he was a huge, huge, huge Knicks fan. And he was a guy who loved sports in general. And, so I know that he's up there smiling, because, he didn't get to see the day, but, he's definitely a part of it. And, and just so many of the celebrities, who are true Knicks fans, obviously Spike Lee, obviously Tracy Morgan and Timothy Chalamet. How do you pronounce his name?
Chalamet. Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, man, it was a great time. Great time.
Went to Carvel to get a milkshake, Tone. All right. One more Knicks thing, and then there's a bunch of Jazz stuff I got to get from you today for our Jazz fan listeners. When did you think that they had a shot? Because honestly, I picked San Antonio in 6. Even when they went up 3-1, even when they came, it was 72-49. Even with all the things that were happening, I thought San Antonio was going to win Game 5. I thought they'd come back and it would be a nervy Game 6, and I would not have been surprised if it went to 7 and they would have broken our hearts again. When did you think they were actually going to do this?
I thought that they had a real shot to win in the second round when I saw them in person against the Sixers. Because, obviously I cover the Sixers now. And, the team that showed up against the Sixers, I was like, yeah, this team can win it all. It's going to be tough for anybody to beat that team 4 times. And I tweeted it. Nobody listened. I tweeted it twice. Nobody listened. I tweeted it again during the conference finals. And I was like, are y'all sure that this Knicks team isn't the best team in the playoffs right now? Nobody listened. And then when they were up 2-0, I tweeted it again, and, people acted like I never tweeted it before. I just thought they were better than the Spurs. I just thought they were flat out better. I thought they were a flat out better team. I thought they were the deeper team. I thought they were the more versatile team. And, I thought Wemby was the best player in the series, but I thought that the Knicks had the next 4 best players in the series. And, when they won that second game, I said, yeah, they really have the Spurs really just don't match up really well. I still see a ton of, the Spurs blew this and, the Spurs didn't do that. And, a lot of stuff that, doesn't give credit to how good the Knicks were. But the Knicks were the better team, and they were the best team in the playoffs by a bunch. And, they won 16 of their 19 games in the playoffs. They won 15 of their last 16 to win the championship. And when you do stuff that dominant and, you're just a juggernaut and you're just better. So, it wasn't anything that the Spurs did or didn't do. It's just that they were just not better than the New York Knicks, and it's okay.
Dude, Jalen is – I don't know that I've ever seen it, man. I mean, and I'm dead serious. I try not to be prisoner of the moment and hyperbolic, but this kid was a second-round pick. So many people didn't even think he was an NBA player. He was good in Dallas, but about a 16-point guy. He had 45 points on the road in a closeout game in the NBA Finals. I honestly am rarely speechless covering this game that I've been around my entire life. I'm not sure that I've ever seen what he has been able to do at his size. You know what I mean?
Are you ready for a Tony Jones hot take? You got me on, so you got to have a Tony Jones hot take.
I want all the Tony Jones hot takes. You know that.
You will see another Victor Wembanyama. The NBA will see another Victor Wembanyama before the NBA sees another Jalen Brunson.
Huh. Are you aware of another 7'5" alien out there?
You will see another 7'5" alien before you see another 6-foot guard who can't jump, can't run, just not really athletic, become one of the best 7 to 10 offensive players in the world.
Yeah.
That's how unique Jalen Brunson is. He is maybe the best player that I've been watching basketball and playing basketball for 40 years. He is maybe the best basketball player I have ever seen off of 2 feet. He's got some of the best footwork I've ever seen. He doesn't remember his last miss. He gave San Antonio way more problems than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did, because Shai, as good as he is, wanted to get to one area. He wanted to get to the mid-range, and San Antonio knew it. And Jalen made San Antonio guard the entire floor within the half court, all 47 feet. And at the end of the day, they couldn't do it. And, he had, his skill set was special, but his stamina was special as well, because you saw, Stephen Castle and Devin Vassell and Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox, attached to him, 94 feet, full court pressing, and he outlasted them conditioning-wise throughout the entire series. They were actually effective against them in the first, definitely 2 games of the series. Game 3, Jalen got a little bit loose. Game 4 is when the tide started to turn, and he got really comfortable, and he led that comeback in the second half. And then Game 5 is when he let him have it. And, you know, he's as unique a player that the league has ever seen. Even if you look at any of the small guys who were, you know, really prevalent, Isaiah Thomas, both Isaiah Thomases, Allen Iverson, Stephen Curry, all of those guys, Nate Archibald, Tiny Archibald, Michael Adams, all of those guys had special physical traits, whether it was Michael Adams and Nate Archibald's speed, or Isaiah Thomas's speed and quickness, and his ability to be vertical. Allen Iverson's long arms, big hands, exceptional speed. Jalen had none of that. He's got short arms. He's not a jumper. He's not a runner. He's never going to blow by you, you know, in a straight line. It's just all skill, a lot of strength, a lot of skill, and a lot of conditioning. And he's got a heart as big as all outdoors. So, you know, to me, he's one of the most unique players that the NBA and that the game of basketball has ever seen.
Yeah, I think that's well said. All right, do have to be a little mindful of the clock here, so let's get to some Jazz stuff. Tim McMahon joins the show yesterday, reports that the Jazz have offered Walker Kessler 5 years, $140 million. Tim then wrote that for .com. What's your understanding of where we're at right now with the Jazz and Walker Kessler, Tone?
Well, I mean, that's accurate. And, you know, I mean, where they're at right now is at an impasse. And, you know, I've said this a couple of times before, but I'm just not sure that this part of it is about the money at this point. I think that, you know, rightfully or wrongfully, Walker feels that he's not valued and that he hasn't been valued by the Jazz. And, you know, and the Jazz feel that they value him, and they feel like they've shown that they value him. So, you know, it's a disagreement on both sides. And, you know, I think, you know, we're not at the point where, you know, you've got to go to the bathroom or get off the pot yet. That's going to come in about 2 weeks. And then we're going to really see, you know, what it is and how much of an impasse, you know, that it really is. And, you know, I think that, you know, two things can be true. I think that, you know, the Jazz are offering Walker a lot of money. I think Walker is frustrated for a myriad of reasons. I think Walker wants to be with Utah. I know that for a fact. He wants to be in Salt Lake City. He wants to continue his career in Utah. And if you're the Jazz, you have to be mindful of the fact that you absolutely have to have Walker Kessler on this roster, because the people that you have defending next year are Keontae George and, you know, Lauri Markkanen, and, you know, you got those guys defending on the perimeter. You better have Walker Kessler behind them. So, you know, his value to the roster is absolute. And, you know, we'll see. The Jazz think that this is regular restricted free agency stuff. I think it goes past that for Walker and his camp. And, you know, like I said, the time to go to the bathroom or get off the pot is rapidly coming. So we'll see exactly where they are in about 2 to 3 weeks.
5 years, $140 million would make Walker the highest paid center in league history who's never made an all-star team, and he's coming off of shoulder surgery. I mean, look, I'm all for players getting paid, but this feels like a very fair deal, Tony, as far as how I understand it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, it feels like a fair deal. So here's some of the issue. You know, some of the issue is, in order for the Jazz to tank properly, you know, they had to, like, not have Walker play. Because if Walker's on the floor, you know, there's no way they were going to lose. There was no way they were just going to lose enough basketball games in order to get to where they needed to go. So there's part of that. And, you know, if you're Walker, it's like, all right, well, you needed me to tank. And now you're saying, you know, that, and now you're saying that, hey, you know, I don't want to pay you this amount of money because you haven't, you know, proven it. So it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of, you know, there was no contract extension last year. You know, they made him go to restricted free agency. And it's a little bit of, you know, Walker's camp and Walker believes that, you know, they're probably, you know, better than that, better than a non-all-star big, you know, and that part, I actually agree a little bit. I think there's a world where Walker makes a couple of all-star games, at least. I think that there's a world where in the prime of his career, you know, he's Rudy Gobert. I think he's one of the top 5 rim protectors in the league. And I think he's one of the top 10 rebounders in the league. So there's a lot to unpack. And I don't think that it's as simple as, hey, we offer 5 years and $140 million. This is fair. You should either take it or leave.
All right, Tone, before I say you loose, and you know this, I don't think the Darren Peterson news is anything that moves the needle with the Jazz front office. I am of the belief that they should and will take whoever Washington doesn't out of A.J. DeBonce and Darren Peterson. However, there is kind of this groundswell of a Cameron Boozer angle here going to the Jazz at 2. Last thing before I say you loose, what's your latest understanding as far as your intel with what the Jazz are thinking 6 days away from the NBA draft?
Well, I wrote these yesterday, but the Jazz are, you know, they've kind of got all 3 of them on the same, you know, on the same level, and they're genuinely torn over all 3 of them, who to take. And, you know, I think if you ask my opinion, I would take either AJ DeBancer or Darren Peterson because, you know, the fit is cleaner. I actually think that Peterson and DeBancer are the 2 best players in the draft. I think that Cameron Boozer is the 3rd best player in the draft. So, you know, if those are best players available, and on top of that, you know, the Jazz don't currently have a starting level shooting guard on the roster, then, you know, it just makes sense to take one of the 2 guards and just rock from there. But, you know, the Jazz really, really like Cameron Boozer. I understand why. You know, there are some special things that he does that are really unique. You know, but for me, you know, if this were me, and I'm not the Jazz, I would take either Peterson or DeBancer.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, bud. Appreciate the time. If you ever get out here, just let us know. You got a spot in the studio, and go Knicks, all right?
No problem. Go Knicks.
Tony Jones covers right now the Sixers for The Athletic, but does a lot of draft stuff and, of course, covered the Jazz for The Athletic for years. Excuse me, at T. Jones on the NBA is where you find him on social media. All right, we will catch a break. Coming up next, we'll do a little soccer, a little World Cup, little Real Salt Lake with Pablo Mastroeni. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. We will say goodnight at 6 on ESPN 700. About 20 minutes away from Ghana and Panama. They're going to get going at about 5 o'clock up in Toronto. Uzbekistan and Colombia will play the late match at 8 o'clock. England took care of Croatia 4-2. And then Portugal drew with Congo DR, their first point in the history of their World Cup experience. To talk some soccer now with our guy Pablo Mastroeni, head coach of RSL. What's up, man? How are you?
Great, Spence, man. Just enjoying the games.
Well, I'm glad I caught you during a window because I don't want you being distracted. So let's get this done so you can get back and watch Ghana Panama. Let's start with a little RSL update as far as, obviously RSL and MLS on this World Cup break. But what are the players up to, time off and such? And then what are you hoping to accomplish with your club prior to the start of the second half of MLS season?
Well, yeah, so today was our first day back, and, we're just getting everyone in the building and making sure everyone's, doing well physically. And then tomorrow we start some testing just to see where they're at. But really, I think with this break is how do we not only keep some momentum from the first part of the season, but continue to improve on certain areas of our game where, we struggled a little bit in the first part. So I think it's a little bit of both. And, I think the one thing that was exciting is, this World Cup being on at the same time has kept everyone at least focused in on, some of the tactical applications of the game, if not for the exciting parts of it. So it's been good to have a few weeks off. The guys are excited to be back. So yeah, it's going to be a great run into the playoffs for us.
I know it's yesterday's news, but of course, Diego Luna, Xavier Gozo, not a part of the U.S. men's national team. I wonder if you could kind of give us a feel for how they're doing now that the team is back, maybe, whether or not they feels like they're going to be motivated or still kind of bummed out, which would be totally understandable.
Yeah, no, I think, it was obviously very difficult for everyone. I think, and I said this where, Luna was one of the most capped players last year in 2025. I think the team and, his teammates really leaned on him through some important tournaments last year in friendlies. So I think it was just a real shock to not see Diego selected into this group. And obviously he had a little injury, in one of the camps. So he didn't go to one camp, but I still think, he did a lot. So, I think that's, at the end of the day, coaches have their reasons why. I've heard many coaches say it's like we don't select the best players, we select the best team. And so I'm sure there's real thoughtful reasons as to the decisions that were made. But Luna's been in this situation and probably more times than he'd like in his really short career to this point, where the Olympics was kind of the same situation where he was left off, and in that instance he came back with a vengeance and really wanted to prove himself and show why why he thought he'd be a great fit for this World Cup. But there's always he's still young enough that he's probably got 3 more World Cups to compete for. So I think his level of maturity is such that he understands that every game moving forward is a chance to show that he's capable of playing on the biggest stage. And the same for Gozo. Obviously, Gozo, his expectations were more about what he's been able to do at the beginning of the year, and what he said to me was that he was a lot more disappointed than he anticipated for himself. He really thought he had a really good chance, to break into the team. But again, another young player with a ton of upside, and I have no doubt that both these guys will eventually see the field for a World Cup game one of these times.
Somebody told me that you are the last replacement World Cup player to be selected for the roster. Is that true?
Yeah, in 2002, Bruce made it really clear to me that I was the last one. I was number 23 out of 23 players, and I think that's obviously expectation setting, but it was also a way to let me know that, listen, if I go there for the right reasons, which is to be the 23rd player, and he said this to me, he says, I need you to continue to compete the way you do. You're a great teammate. Keep the level of our training sessions extremely high. And he says, you never know, if something happens, you might get a chance to play. And so obviously I was grateful to have the opportunity, and as life would have it, a couple guys went down with injuries, and I was ready to go for the first game. So it's just one of those crazy things, right, Spence? Is like, and that's a hard thing to tell players. Is this game is so unpredictable, and sports is so unpredictable, but you always have to be ready to play. And whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes, if you're prepared to play, you've created an opportunity for yourself moving forward. So that was my fate in 2002, and it was an unbelievable experience for me.
Had Kyle Beckerman joined us yesterday, joined us for the pod, and we played it on the show, and we talked about his World Cup experience. I want to kind of dig in with yours a little bit, because you played for the team that went to the quarters, and a lot of people are using that as maybe a litmus test for what this team can do. So when it comes to how you guys were able to get that done back in 2002, what are the keys to that run? And do you think this team may have that run in them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in tournament style, it's the toughest part is really getting out of the group. And I say that because there's a lot of, you have time to think, and you have time to prepare. And so sometimes it could be paralysis by analysis, but I think for us, it was really about getting out of group, and we squeaked through. This year's team's been a little bit different. Obviously, the start that they had was phenomenal, and now there might be a little bit of pressure to repeat those performances. But I think what was different with this group is the amount of players they have in playing for big clubs abroad. And, I think taking the lessons from 22 World Cup and now 4 years of experience, and now the quality that they've gained, and this is an amazing group of guys. And I do think they have what it takes to get beyond the quarters. And I think the interesting thing is, and I felt this when we played Korea in 2002, is the home field advantage is real. And, all the people speaking about, the U.S. and how well they've done in the first game, yeah, there might be some pressure from expectation perspective, but it's also how it affects your opponent's psyche, knowing how well they played and that they have a whole nation behind them. And that's a real thing. And I think, Korea made it to the semis in 2002. And I look at that group, and I look at this group that we have in 2026, and there's no doubt in my mind that if we play up to our standards, I think we can shock the world.
Wanted to get your thoughts, and I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit, but Mauricio Pochettino gave an interview where he talked about, American sports reward losers, and he was discussing the lack of promotion and relegation. And essentially he said, if you play in MLS and you go a month and a half without winning a match, what does it matter? You're not punished the way you are in other countries where you could be relegated. And then went into the dynamic of trying to help this group understand that playing soccer is one thing and competing is another, and basically juxtaposed the American soccer system to what it's like in other countries. And you were born in Argentina, where in other places you have to fight tooth and nail, sometimes in horrific conditions, just to be able to find a place to play, let alone grow and make a team and ultimately become a pro. Whereas in America, and I can tell you as a father of a son who played club soccer, you have to be able to write checks for these kids to play and get good training. Right. I wonder if there's anything there as far as why we haven't had the same success on the world stage as other countries. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'd say, first of all, soccer's obviously, I wouldn't consider it a sport that the U.S. has completely adopted quite yet. I think we're making some great strides. I think this World Cup is going to turn a lot of layman sports fans into soccer fans. I think the experience and, going to these games and seeing what the fan fests before the games feel like, what the chanting feels like in the stadium, just the enormity of this tournament and why the rest of the world are so enamored with the sport, I think is, we're still in our nascent stages as a country. And so I'd say that's a part of it. And the other countries have been playing this game for hundreds of years at a really, really high level, right? Or 100 plus years. And so a lot of these countries have just a head start. It's and it's a part of the fabric of their culture, right? A lot of these small towns in these certain countries, these guys work all week just to buy a ticket for the game at the weekend, and that's why there's so much passion in the game, is because the fans are sacrificing a lot just to come to these games, and so then that gets carried on to the players, and so I think it's a really interesting conversation, but I think if you look at our first game against Paraguay, you see like we're right there, and yeah, I think all these things are variables that you can make arguments one way or the other. But as far as, rewarding losers, I don't think it's accurate. I think it's where the game is going, as far as not having promotion relegation, just because from an investment perspective, billionaires don't want to make an investment where they're going to lose money if their team gets knocked down to the second division. Like, that's why it's, and I think the model of MLS is proven, where from 1996, we've continued to grow this league to now where we have a guy like Messi playing in our league, and everyone's like, well, yeah, he's scoring all those goals because he's playing in MLS, and then he goes to the World Cup and he does the same thing. So now I think it's like people are starting to realize, like, and for a guy like Gozo, for example, because I was thinking about what you were at, your question, and how does it help, develop young players? And it's like, if Gozo's the same player and he's playing in the Premier League where you have promotion relegation, and he has one bad game as a 17-year-old kid, chances are he's not going to see the field again because they need to win that game. Where for us in MLS, we have a longer runway to develop young talent. We have facilities, we have resources, we have great, our club has a fantastic culture of development. And so those things are really, really positive. And I think for the next generation of player, our environments that we have in MLS are much more catered to their growth in this new modern football and this new modern world we live in than it is to go to somewhere where there is promotion relegation. So I think both ways have its pros and cons, and I think you can make arguments either way. But I think this is a model that has proven since 1996 that it works.
I wonder if you believe we would ever see promotion relegation here. Now, to be clear, I do not, because, I have a close family member that once upon a time owned a team. And so I understand the way owners think about this. I honestly think, I think it would cure everything that's been wrong with pro basketball. But do you think we'll ever see promotion relegation in America in any sport?
No, I don't think so. I just don't think. I think it's just it was a way that they did it back then to give different cities the opportunity to move up into the top leagues. But I think just moving forward with the amount of money that's being invested in the modern game, the amount of money it costs to bring big players over, and they have one tough season and all of a sudden that player's now playing in the second division, or you have to lose all that investment. It just doesn't make sense from a business perspective, and I think the more that the more that the U.S. fan base is exposed to this high level soccer that we are this month, you start to really understand the nuances of the game. You can really, and now more than ever, MLS fans have a huge voice in what they expect from clubs, and you see it all over this league where they expect it's 30 teams, and everyone wants to win the MLS Cup, and so there's more pressure on players and coaches and clubs today than there ever has been before, and I think that's a testament to the level of soccer understanding that our fans have, and so. There's pressure today that I'd say didn't exist when I was a player in this league.
Haaland gets a brace, Mbappe gets a brace. You referenced Messi with a hat trick. Harry Kane got a brace today. How cool is this that the Stars, outside of Ronaldo, we had a rough day today, but the Stars so far have really shown out, haven't they?
Yeah, no, they've been great, man. Spence, I'm telling you. I'm in awe of this World Cup. Just really the stadiums, the people, the fans, the celebration, the unity of teams playing against each other, sitting in the same sections. But more importantly, the quality on the field has been exceptional, and the different styles that teams play, and like you said, when the Stars show up, that's what that's what sports are all about. We watch all these different sports, basketball to see Jordan, soccer to see a guy like Messi and Kane and Mbappe, and, their countries play a different style, but they're representative of their cultures, but they're all successful and playing extremely well and carrying the teams at the moment. So just a lot of cool storylines, both on the field and in the stands and in the cities and watching these fan fests. And, man, I'm in awe of how far, not only the game has come, but these World Cups have come in the last, 20 years.
All right, before I say you lose, I need your pick to win the tournament, and then I'm going to let you give me a dark horse as well. Your favorite, then maybe a dark horse.
Wow, man, it's so hard. You watch these games and you're like, man, these guys. I mean, like France. Look at Germany. The first couple of minutes, it's so hard, Spence. I'm gonna go with Argentina, just because, again, I think they have the X factor in a guy that plays in our league that represents all of us in the MLS, showcasing himself with the sit-in champs. So I'm gonna say Argentina, and then dark horse, but not too far behind, I'm gonna say the U.S. And I said this before the World Cup started, so I don't want to say I'm a bandwagon guy after the first game. I really think that if we can get out of group play, we'll have enough momentum, we'll have confidence, and we'll have support of the fans in this country to really push the team forward. And maybe a U.S.-Argentina final would be,
oh my gosh,
an amazing event.
Dude. Well, the Knicks just won a championship, so maybe anything's possible, Pablo. Who knows?
That's right.
All right, my friend. Welcome back from vacation. Hope you enjoyed some time off. Glad you're back at it, and thank you for your time today, okay?
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it, man.
Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach. The boys are back at it. The lads, I should say, back at training after about a 3-week break, and they'll be back at it before you know it. But, of course, World Cup soccer, top of mind awareness. And before we catch a break, speaking of the World Cup, DraftKings Sports is live in all 50 states. Yes, that means you, Utah. The whole world is watching one tournament right now. Group stage chaos, knockout drama, stoppage time heartbreak. The DraftKings Sports app is now live in Utah, so whether you're catching the early kickoff before work or the late match at the bar, you're in on every minute, every match, every moment, all in one app. The world's biggest stage is in the palm of your hand. New DraftKings customers, listen up. Sign up with promo code ESPN700. Spend only $5 and you get $200 in total rewards. That's code ESPN700. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Event trading offered by DraftKings Predictions, a CFTC registered introducing broker. Trading involves risk of loss. Market availability varies. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 every 7 days via click to claim, issued in non-withdrawable prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. That ends on June the 28th. Terms are dkng.co/predictions promo. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program is next on ESPN 700. World Cup action continues tonight. I've got to say, love that the World Cup is on as the NBA season has come to an end, and we are all awaiting fall for college and pro football. Obviously, Major League Baseball rolling along, MLS on a little bit of a break. England was able to take care of business earlier. Harry Kane had a brace, joining the list of superstar players that have played really well so far. 4-2 over Luka Modric and Croatia. Gone to Panama right now. Later on tonight, it's Uzbekistan and Colombia. And then earlier today, Portugal was held to a draw by the Congo DR. First point and first goal in the history of their World Cup experience, so pretty cool. Less than 48 hours from the U.S. men's national team back on the pitch, taking on Australia. That's going to be a 1 o'clock start time on Fox up at Lumen Field in Seattle. So it should be a really, really cool environment. Obviously, NBA draft. Want to remind you guys that you should come hang out with us next Tuesday night. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be at Big Willie's. It's right downtown on Main Street, Salt Lake City. Well, not downtown specifically, but 1717 Main Street. So a little out south, but not that much. Myself, Sean O'Connell, Gordy Chiesa, Richard Smith. If you've ever wanted to meet Gordy or Smitty, they're just the best. And we will have the best draft night coverage for you, and I'll just say by far. Of course, Gordy, longtime Jazz assistant coach, head coach in the NBA, coached some great college teams with Rick Pitino. And then Smitty, 40 years as part of the Utah Jazz front office. So we will come break that down for you guys coming up on Tuesday night of next week at Big Willie's. So keep that in mind. It feels like the Brendan Sorsby stuff died, and then everyone's like, all right, time to move on.
Well, yeah, because it was kind of anticlimactic, right? Where we expected this to be a little bit of a Red Raider showdown and a duel. And then the folks at Texas Tech, after all their blustering and moral grandstanding and legal threats and all of the above, kind of figured it out, right? That they were having an uphill battle, and regardless of how you feel about Brendan Sorsby as a player, it just was not worth it. And I think that all became clear when multiple AGs and some lawyers sent that demand for action. And I think Texas Tech realized it. Brendan Sorsby realized that the best way to move forward is probably just to punt on that specific endeavor and wish each other well. And I'll be honest, Spence, I think that the result of this offseason almost every which way was going to be that Brendan Sorsby would be involved in the supplemental draft. I don't think, even though I was outspoken and upset, I didn't think he was going to end up playing. I think it was going to be a court situation throughout much of the offseason. And Texas Tech leaders didn't see that. And I think, Spence, they kind of took the brunt of this. They are the ones who, when it's all said and done, don't look too great. And we're going to look back on this situation for the future, and it's going to dictate how we think of Cody Campbell and the Board of Regents there and the leaders at Texas Tech. They put their coach and their football program in a really tough position and look worse for it. Now, I think the attention kind of turns to, as the agent and now folks at Texas Tech are pointing, hey, Cincinnati, when did you know about this? And how many times did you keep playing Brendan Sorsby while knowing about this? Same with, I guess, Indiana. I also don't think this story is over. Yes, he's going to enter the supplemental draft, but I wonder what NFL team is going to take a waiver on what I believe to be a barely above average quarterback when there very well could be state and federal investigations that we do not know about going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, you've been on that from the start, which is fair to bring up because at this point he is skirting federal crimes. One thing that came down today is Ron Slavin, who is Brendan Sorsby's agent, told a radio station in Dallas that Cincinnati should be, quote, questioned or catching heat because the school knew of Sorsby's gambling for 2 years and, quote, never said anything. Now, for Cincinnati's part, they have adamantly denied this. of course, saying that they would never knowingly pay an athlete who had violated NCAA gambling rules. Brendan Sorsby played at Cincinnati for 2 seasons. Okay, so we know that he was gambling throughout the course of his career at Cincinnati, and obviously prior to that at Indiana, when he bet on Indiana 40 times, even though he didn't play in games, which I continue to say does not matter. He was in meetings. He was in practices. So, yeah, Cincinnati came out and denied that adamantly. And I've got to say, I'm ready to move on myself.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So when I heard the news that he was entering the supplemental draft, it just felt right. It's like, this is probably what should happen. I will not hate on this young man. Go get well. Go try to make a living playing pro football and put all of this behind you, because I'm a believer in that in life. Life is not linear. It is not a straight line. So hopefully he can figure that out. Do you think this changes whether or not Texas Tech should be the favorite in the Big 12? I've been pretty adamant that I do not believe it should change. I mean, if BYU was the second best team a year ago, they got smoked by Tech twice.
Yeah. I don't think it changes much. Honestly, I think whether he is there or not, I think Will Hammond is a comparable quarterback, although not quite as talented on the arm side as a Brendan Sorsby. But I do think the Big 12 is fairly wide open. Texas Tech did lose quite a bit of production. They are bringing in a bunch of talent, but I think there are 3 or 4 Big 12 teams that are going to have a say about it, and looking forward to that football season. What I will say is that while I am glad that this part of the saga is behind us, I will say the positives that come from it are how serious people took the matter, right? Outside of like one zip code in West Texas. I am a little bit relieved, a little bit heartened by the fact that like legislators and fans and conference mates and commissioners were like all in, line in the sand. We're not doing this, because we are moving in a direction in the whole sports world where I'm a little uncomfortable with how comfortable the sports gambling stuff is, in whether it's deals with the NBA, right? Marketing partnerships. The fact that the people who are in the competition side were so adamant and so strong against this, including an attorney general from Utah who has made it clear, if you do this in this state, looking at you, athletes at Utah and BYU and otherwise, you're going to face charges, right? You're not just going to continue on and play your game. You're breaking the law. So that was somewhat heartening to see just how steadfast and consistent people were with opposing this.
Yeah, it's the other reason why this had to happen.
Yep.
There just was no way this kid. Again, I've tried to approach that. We had an addiction specialist on the show. I mean, I've tried to be as fair as possible to the angle they took as far as, the mental health side of things and fighting an addiction and trying to get well. But the entire premise of competition and the authenticity of your product is absolutely compromised if the players involved are placing wagers on the outcome. It just is. And this has been the deal forever. I mean, gambling is so in our face now that we talk about it all the time. But gambling by no way, shape, or form is a new thing. Have you ever seen Field of Dreams? Go look at the Black Sox scandal of 1919. Like, this has been going on for a century or more. And every time any of the players involved, and by players, I mean players, coaches, owners, administration, anytime any of the actors involved are thought to be caught up in this, they are told you have to go away, and you have to go away forever. Pete Rose had to die before he had some semblance of forgiveness from Major League Baseball. And I don't want Brendan Sorsby's entire life to be ruined, but there was just no way he could march out on a college football field again. And by the way, for his own health, if we're thought to believe that that's the angle, as I keep saying, you would not make an alcoholic a rep for Jack Daniels. So, look, we will move on from it, but that was the piece of news that we didn't get to earlier today. His agent going on a Dallas radio station and claiming Cincinnati knew all along what the deal was, and I can't corroborate that. I really have no idea. All right. Obviously, a lot of attention right now surrounding the Walker-Kessler negotiations with Utah Jazz, and the NBA draft is 6 days away. NBA offseason is here. Obviously, pro hockey offseason as well. World Cup rolling along, and we'll get out of here for a Wednesday. But, Porter, what's coming up on a Thursday show?
On a Thursday edition of The Drive, resident NBA Network Knicks fan Mike Yam stops by the program. We can talk a little football with Mike Yam as well. Howard Beck for your NBA Daily Assist. Our guy Tony Parks will stop by the program, and we'll talk about the Sorsby thing one more time with our friends from Handy and Handy on Sports Court.
Well, they can help us understand the legal side of things, so definitely stay tuned for that. Good Thursday show ahead. And we will say goodnight for a Wednesday. Fun show today, man. Good job, Porter. Special thank you today to Neil Smith, Mike Breen, Tony Jones, and Pablo Mastroeni. For any of the sound you missed from the show today, go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download the mobile app and take us on the go. And then for what we do in our space every afternoon, 4 hours of it, podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Also, Reality Check with Spence Checketts, episode 11, live right now with Kyle Beckerman. Check him out tonight. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Wednesday evening. Talk to you on a jam-packed Thursday drive. And as always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700.